men use everything as a tool. Men are known for using every single situation as a tool. So religion, they use it as a tool, just like feminism can also be a tool. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Timmy. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing male privilege and how even being with a feminist man is dangerous, or the reason why there's a kickback around feminist movements who are like, oh, they're like jumping from one word saying a man cannot be feminist, the best he can be is an ally, or even with allies, women still don't feel safe around them. And we're going to be diving into that conversation because I usually get a lot of messages from men who consider themselves feminists, and or people who believe that women actually have rights just like men, and they would not hurt a man, or they would say things like not all men. I get those kind of messages a lot, but I usually would not reply to such messages because at the end of the day, the way they even talk, it's mostly, I still find disrespectful. But I got this particular message that I feel like the person was a little bit confused, and then maybe the message, I kind of feel like the person is speaking from a genuine place, and the mannerism I also find respectful. So that is why I'm going to be answering this. And also, if you're a woman and you get messages like that, or you get men asking you things like that, this is just me diving into that conversation so that pretty much you know why you feel that way and towards them, and so you'll be able to answer them as well. And also, if you're a woman who has that concern as well, and like, oh, you feel like feminism is something that even men should practice, and you want to and other feminists are saying they don't believe a man can be a feminist, and it bothers you, this is just me opening up this conversation. If what you feel like I'm saying is not exactly what you believe, it's okay to argue, or it's okay to oppose me. It's okay for you to correct, contribute, or whatever. You can do that in the comment section. And pretty much, I mean, it's an open conversation. So he sent this message. He said, well, I'm a guy, don't know how often you get messages from growing men who are interested in feminism. I like the fact that he said growing men, right, who are interested in feminism and women's rights. Maybe it's often and maybe it's not. I've been in the feminist space early 2020 and just ejected myself in 2021. Not that I stopped believing and upholding women's rights at the time, but the space was certainly confusing. I can understand your confusion, and I'll get back to you coming into the movement or to the space and going back later. Not that I stopped believing and upholding women's rights at the time, but the space was certainly confusing, especially as a guy. Having no place in the movement was confusing as someone who just wants to help. Whether I was a guy or not, it was just confusing to me. If that wasn't if that didn't twist my head enough, I would hear people say there's no such thing as a male feminist. They can be a male feminist. I do believe that there's a thing as a male feminist, because if what does feminism a feminist is simply somebody who advocates for the right of women, and advocates against gender bias, and advocates for equality in the sexes. That's simply what being a feminist means. So it could be a guy, it could be a woman, it doesn't matter, right? So, and I had no clue what that even meant, especially because Chimamanda's books were my entry into the movement. I like a lot of her books. I may have one or two opposing ideas with Chimamanda, but at the end of the day, she's very brilliant and I love her. I feel like she was also the first person that I heard of who held on to similar beliefs as I did growing up. She was like the first very vocal for feminist for most Nigerian women. So there are other feminists, but the person who was very vocal and using the term feminism within the Nigerian space, who is the most popular, let me say, is Chimamanda. She may not be first, but she's the most popular. So you cannot talk about feminism without talking about Chimamanda, right? So he said, was until a few weeks ago that I saw three very different meanings. Didn't make matters better, but it didn't make them worse either. One being that men are not to be centered into the feminist movement and they should just be called allies. He further said the other being that men can't be trusted to bring down the patriarchy and are incapable of it. Another one is, and the last being that there is no world for men. I mean, in all of it, I don't even know what to think. Have never met anyone who thinks the last one, even though I've seen people who think the first two, but they are certainly out there somewhere, I guess. In all, I don't think there's anybody who would genuinely think there is no world for men. I don't think so. People can be of the opinion that there is no hope for men when it comes to restoring, going back against the patriarchy, but I don't think they would ever say there is no world for men, right? In all, I just wonder what I can do right and whether I should just sit there and do nothing when everything in me is dying to help, right? So this is his question. And I can't even believe that I'm answering a man. Mannerism does get me anyway, because I usually would care less about a man's question, right? But I kind of find this one educative. I find the person trying. So because of that, I give them credit. So the first thing, the issue with women speaking against, the issue why we see a lot of feminist women coming out to say men, they don't trust male feminists, they don't, I personally don't trust them as well. But the reason is for one specific reason. One specific reason, and that reason alone. And that reason is privilege. So, because of privilege, the privileges that men have within the society, I mean, let's start from what the patriarchy means. The patriarchy means is the system or government in which the father or the eldest male in the head of the family and descent is reckoned through the male line. The thematic relationship of the ballad are worked out according to the conventional archetypes of the patriarchy. A system or society of government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. So, I think of all the definitions of the patriarchy, I'm yet to see a definition that really encompasses it properly for me in my mind, honestly. But then, notwithstanding, this particular one says a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are excluded from it. I feel like this is the short or the brief definition of the patriarchy, but one can go further to say the patriarchy is a system that gives that men hold power, right? It is a system or government or society where men hold power and the powers are held against women and children. Subjugate women and use women as tools. Is a society marked by the supremacy of men. I like that better. The patriarchy simply means a society marked by the supremacy of men. Now, back to the conversation with this guy. One thing that the patriarchy does is to give men supremacy and privileges. So, if you understand how government works, you will know that even within a country like Nigeria, for instance, no matter what the president of the country does, he has immunity. So even when he commits a crime, he does have immunity. So if you have the understanding of what immunity means, so it means a president can unalive a person, he can grape a person, but the fact that he is a president, there is nothing that even the law can do to the person until they are no longer president. So that immunity that the president has is a privilege because the person is in power. Now, consider men as the president within the patriarchy and women as the subject or subordinate within the patriarchy, children as well. Here's the thing. Women men do not actually understand the level of privileges that they have within the patriarchy. So even when a man says he is feminist, he still says that with ignorance, or with not so clear understanding of the privileges that he has within society. So that is the reason why, number one, everything I'm going to be saying today is going to be surrounded around the privileges that men have within the patriarchy. But the first thing is they are ignorant of the degree of the privilege, that even male feminists are ignorant of the degree of the privileges that they have within society. Another thing is the ability to feminism for men has come, and it looks like a trend, or it looks like it is a sign of a guy being cool, right? So a lot of men who come into the feminist space comes because it is the new cool thing to be. So if you are a male feminist, it's considered you're cool, you're progressive. It's like, because there's been assertions that men are backward, men do not evolve, men are not necessarily smart. So because of that, there's an influx of men into feminist space, where it's like an indicator of smartness, is an indicator of evolving or evolvement, right? And things like that. Then there are men who came into the feminist space because they have experienced some form of subjugation and oppression, and it's like they have, especially systemic subjugation and oppression, just like women have. So it is for that reason that they begin to advocate for the right of every other human, because feminism actually provides equality, not just gender, but feminism, especially modern day feminism, fights for the right of humanity, so every human at all. And that is why the LGBTQ community is in the LGBTQIA plus is included in the feminist movement, the modern day feminist movement. And I feel like that's why a lot of traditional men have a problem with feminism, because of the inclusion of the LGBTQIA plus in the community, right? So moving forward, black men, for instance, and the LGBTQ men. So like we have people like trans women and gay men, and trans women, gay men, and some queer people who actually came into the feminist movement because, I mean, they understand subjugation and oppression. But at the end of the day, sometimes some feminist people still have an issue with like homosexual men and trans women. The reason is because a lot of people, they are still arguing that these men still have male chromosomes. Like, they are still, some people still argue that they are still men. I think Chimamanda Adichie is also of the same opinion, that they are still men. So they still have the tendencies, because of the privilege that I mentioned, they still have those privileges that they can actually fall back at, right? So some people within the feminist movement actually do find them dangerous, just like they will find every other man, right? That's another thing. Then another thing is that men use everything as a tool. Men are known for using every single situation as a tool. So religion, they use it as a tool, just like feminism can also be a tool in their hands. So a typical example of that is Ramses and Marissa from Love is Blind. If you're a fan of Love is Blind, if you don't watch it, please watch this season 6. I mean, I think season 6, the one, they just concluded one, I think the American version, right? There's this guy Ramses, who I think is Latino or something, if I'm not mistaken. And because he also understands, he also has been through some form of subjugation and oppression. He understands what's happening. He understands power systems, right, and power dynamics, because he has been on the side of being a victim of those situations. So it's like he's progressive, and he sold himself on the show as a progressive and an evolved man. So I kind of feel like that was why the lady kind of fell for him, and from the first meeting she was already sleeping with him and things like that, only for us to further into the show realize that he's not as evolved as he claims to be. He is the typical feminist boy or feminist man who eventually We could see typical male traits, typical male dangers in him as well. He's a divorcee. So at first he was like they got divorced on mutual terms with his wife. As soon as he said that, I personally clocked it and I was like, nope. The moment a man tells you they get divorced for he and his wife decided to go their separate ways on mutual agreement, just know that he has been and he's been emotionally abusive towards the woman, or he does not participate in the emotional and mental work of that relationship, and the woman keeps begging and gets frustrated and decides to leave. It is never a mutual thing. Women do not leave relationships that they are emotionally satisfied and they especially emotionally and mentally satisfied. If they find people who are genuine partners emotionally and mentally, women do not leave those relationships because they understand that the most difficult thing to find is a man who is emotionally stable and emotionally connected to you. So women don't tap out of those relationships. So the moment he said they got divorced on mutual terms, I immediately knew he was not as progressive as he said he was, right? Coming back, we later in the show would see how he treated the Marisa lady. And a lot of people are having setbacks about him because he broke up with her. I don't have a problem with him breaking up with her or the way that he broke up with her. I just have a problem with the fact that he posed himself to be progressive and he used feminism as a tool. He used being an evolved person or a progressive person as a tool. So he was not progressive, he was not feminist. He just used it as a tool because you could see how he was talking about. She said she had an ill health that she was dealing with, and you could see how he did not show her any form of empathy. Rather, he was more worried about his sexual needs being met and how if they do get married, his sexual needs to be met. So he was pressuring her even though she was quote unquote sick at the moment. So you can see that men would use anything as a tool. So at what point are women supposed to be trusting of men to say, oh, this person, because they can never tell if the person is being genuine or the person is actually just using feminism as a tool. So with that, you would not blame women when they are scared of men saying they are feminist. I also have a lot of examples of people who I may not want to mention their names because I mean they are public figures who were feminists, but something happened and then they were not feminist again. Another thing is talking about privilege, right? Men have the privilege to use feminism as a tool, women do not. Men have the privilege of withdrawing from being feminist, and that is something that that is where another thing that bothers a lot of women with trusting men who claim to be feminists. Taking example with, I'm so sorry, but allegedly at a point, Solomon Bucci was a feminist at a point. He was pro-women and all that. But as soon as it was time for him to get married, it's more like modern day, he started making videos that modern day feminism is bad, modern day feminism is evil. So you can see that they never really understand what the fight is about. Men have the luxury of beginning to talk about things that they do not have education about. So most of the time when men come out to say they are feminists, they have not actually studied and read enough material about feminism to know what it is, and they've never really asked themselves the questions, why do I need to be a feminist as a man? If you've not come to the point where you ask yourself, why am I feminist as a man? Why do I feel like I should be a feminist? If you've not answered those questions of what is feminism, why is feminism needed, and why am I a feminist, if you've not answered and reconciled those questions to yourself, it is impossible for you to be genuine with your feminism movement. Now, that is another reason, right? So we can see Solomon Buchi's recent post and shaming modern day feminism. Modern day feminism is just a little bit more radical than the previous days because those women back then, in fact, even with the way they were not so radical, a lot of them lost their lives on account of feminism. A lot of them lost families. The implication of being vocally feminist is even very dangerous. So now imagine So as time is progressing, women are beginning to understand that the subjugation is more like, by now men should have gotten it, but the fact that they still don't get it, and this is 2024, you're expecting women to do certain things, the dehumanization is just women are now getting educations. If back in the day you're like women should be subjugated because they don't have educations, now they do have education, why do you feel the need to subjugate them? So, and because of the progress feminism has made, we would notice that there has been a rise in men returning to traditional values, claiming to return to traditional values, right? So there is a need for radical feminism, because personally I believe in radical feminism. I am a radical feminist. Left to me, women should abandon men and stop catering for men until men realize, and I know that in this generation they may not realize, but drastic situations calls for drastic actions. And if women have to be in relationship with men, they should totally divorce and leave men if men cannot work on themselves and evolve beyond that nonsense traditional man, right? So there is a dire need for radical feminism, because I feel like that is the only thing that can actually cause a change within feminist movement. If it is not radical, the tendencies of us making progress, it is none to zero, especially now that men are running back to traditional values. We have men running back to religion while women are tapping out of religion. We have men running back to we want kids, even at the expense of women, while women are saying they don't want kids, they don't want families anymore, because all those children and family were built on the back and the shoulders of women, and it was never appreciated. It is something that women would do and it never goes appreciated. That is another thing, right? So if you don't understand feminism and you're somebody who would come out and say you're a feminist as a man, and tomorrow we have you saying modern day feminism is this, that is like men always try to benefit from when, like I said, being it can be cool, right? So now we have social media where you get paid for content. So men are using feminism to get paid. They are using it as a get rich quick scheme. So because when they start making feminist content, a lot of women give them support. I see a lot of men who say they are feminist online. They have like a panel, maybe they are going lives on social media, they are going live on social media, and on their panel you have to pay to comment or pay to even be on the live or things like that. So they are using it as a way to generate revenue for themselves. A lot of them are not genuine. Recently we clocked a guy on TikTok. There's this guy, I think Medusa's Secret or something like that, who used to talk about narcissism and how to avoid, typical male feminist and progressive man kind of thing. And recently we have a woman come out to say he abused her, he almost unalived her. So when you have things like that, it's like, who exactly can you trust? So you wouldn't blame women when they don't trust male feminists. Now another thing is, aside from men using it as a cash cow, another thing is, you never truly, if you're a person with privileges, right, it's okay for you to say, I strip myself off of my privileges and I want to speak up for people who don't have that privilege. But you speaking up for people who don't have that privilege does not mean it strips you off of your privilege. You still have your privileges, right? It's like a very wealthy kid saying he doesn't want anything to do with his parents. Or maybe we have people who say they are progressive and their parents are wealthy, but they don't want to be associated with their parents' wealth because they believe that the wealth their parents have is not ethical. And we have those children maybe relocating from their family to a certain maybe to a rural area, and living and saying they are starting from afresh. You cannot trust that child because they were born into that privilege. Maybe men are born into that privilege, so they have the opportunity to go back to their privileges at any time. So in old age, at any time, a man can abandon feminism and go back into holding his privilege. Just like this guy who asked this question said, he started the movement in 2020, and then in 2021 he had to move back out. You went back to your privilege, so you have the luxury of going back to your privilege. Women do not. Once you get involved and get aware as a woman, you get more radicalized from there. It is up and up and up with the radicalization. You do not even have the luxury of going back. I see a lot of women. There was one woman who came out to make a joke. She was never even feminist to begin with. She's a comedian who said she doesn't know who signed her up to feminism, but she wants a man who will financially cater for her. She's not doing feminism again. She said that as a joke. I find that a very stupid joke, because if women do understand what feminism is, they will not joke about it like that. Even if she's not a feminist, I don't expect her to make those kind of jokes, right? But then she made that joke, and men till this day are circulating the video everywhere. They are using it to mock feminism. So if I am as a woman now, as a feminist, if tomorrow I come out and say I denounce feminism, they would use my videos to say the feminist movement is a scam. They will use my videos to, even though the movement is not a scam, they will use it to shame the movement, which is actually a genuine movement that has really saved people. It has saved women. Every woman today that can pick up a camera like I do and put in my face and I'm saying my opinions, it is because of feminism. So even if I decide that I'm leaving feminism now, I'm no longer a feminist, I mean, they will shame me for my videos. But a man can enter and use it as cash cow, make his money, do whatever he wants to use it for, whatever tool he decides to use it for, he will use it and tap out of the movement, and nobody will shame him. So that is the difference between the privileges that is the privileges that is offered to men that women within the society don't have. Right? So you have the privilege to go back to your privileges. Women don't have that. So, and you cannot have men, you trust men, you sit with them, you discuss your issues, your plans, and how things affect you. You're speaking about your trauma as a woman, being raised as a woman in a society like this, with a man who you believe you trust because he is feminist, only for him to return to feminism, to against feminism tomorrow, and is now ridiculing everything that you have told this person. And these things are like things that you hold dear to you. So you can see how it makes it difficult for women to trust feminist men. Now, these are some of the reasons. It is not even all of it. Another reason is you have to understand that for women, getting educated about feminism, becoming a feminist, is empowering for women. It is empowering, and it makes you, from there you go uphill, like I said earlier. But for men, considering their privilege, it is not necessarily empowering, because the oppression and subjugation of women is what is empowering for women, for men within the patriarchy. So the patriarchy empowers men. Women walk their way to empowerment. Women thrive and fight their way to empowerment. Men are born empowered. So it's like they walk their way to the degree of power that they have. Women, on the other hand, is not so. So a man saying he wants to be feminist literally means he is working against his powers. He is denouncing his power. So it's like it is a retrogression for him. It is retrogression for him. And it is a shameful and a painful process. Because if you stand amongst other men who are talking about subjugating women, and you as a man says that is not true, men will shame you. Men will attack you. And especially when you've tested from a privilege, the patriarchy is like a cult. The moment you test from it, it is difficult for you to go back on it, because the fact that you tested from it, they will come at you for testing and now denouncing it. So it is a shameful process for men. It is not necessarily an empowering state, right? So you would hardly trust a person who is like, he decides to do the feminist thing because eh, as a woman, you understand the shame, the pain that it has to be a woman, and to also say women have rights. So if a man is saying those things, you just cannot trust. For a person to denounce their privilege, you cannot trust if they are actually doing it for genuine reasons. Now, here is my advice for a man who is a feminist and who is confused about these sort of things. Number one, if nobody is clapping for you for being a feminist, if nobody is encouraging you, would you still be a feminist? If nobody is encouraging you, if nobody is clapping for you, and be genuine with yourself with the question. If the answer is no, then it means you actually still do not get it, because if you don't really understand what you're fighting for, because the way I am now, right, if everybody stops to fight for feminism, if everybody stops fighting for equality, if everybody stops speaking for equality, I will still speak about it. I will still speak about it. I will still speak for it, because it is something that I have genuinely come to believe. And I genuinely, in my heart of hearts, even if the entire world is saying no, I would say yes. Because I remember when I started being loud about feminism, it's as if everybody, even women, will look at you strange and they're like, what's wrong with this one? People see you and people call you names. Some say you're arrogant, some say you just want to be wayward, you just want to not have be held accountable for your actions, you just want to, all those things. But then it doesn't matter. It is still, until I even started coming online, right? I remember back then on Facebook when I would make posts like that, and then I started seeing people with like minds and coming on social media, on TikTok as well, and I now have a community. But before then, it was a very lonely journey for me, because it's more like everybody around you is speaking against these things, but I held on to my beliefs. So that is something that a male feminist may not be able to do, because if nobody is talking about it, if nobody is saying anything, would you still have interest in talking about it? So that is why women are that's why you're hearing people say, oh, you can only be an ally, you cannot be feminist. And then another thing is reading reading your chat, right? Reading the question that the guy asked. Yeah, I addressed the issue of you entering into it in 2020 and leaving in 2021. It is still because you have a privilege as a man. He said, one being that men are not to be centered into the feminist movement. Men are so used to being centered in every aspect of life. Ask yourself, why does it trigger you that women are saying don't be a part of the feminist movement, right? The reason is because you as a man is so used to being centered in everything. So now that there's a concept that they are saying they do not want to center you in their movement. And a lot of that, instead, the first line of thought is, why would they not want to center men? Is because you genuinely believe that if men are not involved, the movement will not work. Because men are used to being centered everywhere. Women are trying to decenter men and decenter the idea of patriarchy. The idea of patriarchy cannot be decentered if they don't decenter men, the help of men, and everything that men have to offer. Now, you keep doing you. If you are genuine, you keep doing you. You keep advocating, whether publicly, whether privately. Keep advocating for what you believe and what you stand for. Regardless of who is telling you that they don't want, they are not interested, you're not doing it for them. If you understand that you're doing this thing because in your heart of hearts you genuinely want to do it, it is something you believe and you're talking about something you believe, then it will not matter who is speaking contrary against what you believe, right? So this is you actually trying to center yourself as a man. I know that this may sound like an insult, but it is not. Do not center yourself in any issue that women are talking about. The world does not revolve around you as a man. And if you understand that, you would decenter men yourself before. If you, as a feminist man, if you've not decentered the idea of self and decentered men in your own movement, it is not possible for you to actually even be a genuine ally or of feminism. Because at the end of the day, it is because people are clapping. That is why you have the urge to move on, to keep doing it, right? If nobody is clapping, will you still want to do it? Then he said, men can't be trusted to bring down the patriarchy and are incapable of it. You cannot bring down a system that benefits you. The patriarchy is for the benefit of men. Men cannot. I personally feel women are the only ones who can bring down the patriarchy, not men. You have benefited in the system as a man. You cannot bring down the system, because the men who actually even speak against these things, any man that can rise to power, women can rise to power regardless, but any man that rises to a certain level of power, it is because the person upholds the patriarchy, right? So there are certain levels of power that if you become progressive and if you evolve as a man, you will not even have interest in those kind of powers, right? That may be a conversation for another day. And this is also the mindset that I need women to get rid of. There is no man anywhere that is coming to save you. So women think there is a man, it's just, let's just have good men in leadership who would allow who would allow women to, who would promote equality and everything will be fine one day. It is never going to happen. It is something that you as a woman will have to fight for. And whether men come on board or not, it is something that it is your responsibility, because you are the victim of the situation, not men. Men are not coming to save you. Men are not coming to save you. Your own predator cannot save you, right? It's like a lion that is fed now, keeping a goat in his cage, and is telling the goat, don't worry, I'll protect you. That protection, or don't worry, I will save you, that saving, I will save you from other lions or other animals that are trying to devour you. That protection and safety can only happen as long as that lion is fed. The moment the lion becomes hungry, the lion will use you as their meal. So that is in the same manner. A man cannot save you from the patriarchy, because the moment he has the opportunity to pull his privilege card, if things become tough for him and he has the opportunity to pull his privilege card, he will pull his privilege card. The patriarchy prioritizes wealthy men over broke men. That is the reason why we sometimes say even wealthy men are dangerous to be around. And that's true, because at the end of the day, there is no consequences to their actions. And even if there are consequences, you do not want to be a victim before consequences happen, because it does not take away the impact of what that man has done to you. So men are not capable of dismantling the patriarchy. It is something that they thoroughly benefit from. If you cancel the patriarchy today, men will not know how to live. So they will have to learn to live from afresh. So that is why they fight to hold the patriarchy, to uphold the patriarchy so bad. Because scrapping the patriarchy, it means men do not know how to live without it. Men cannot be, if that's why even within marriages, men do not know how to be equal partners. So even when a man accepts that, okay, I do want to be an equal partner, he doesn't know how to be. They are still teaching men how to be human. They are teaching men how to be decent people. It's not even about connecting with women emotionally at this point. They are still teaching them how to be decent people. We still have men who are eccentric till this day, that they have to teach that you don't touch somebody in public, you don't do certain things. They are still teaching men the basics of being a human. So they are the same people who you think will save you. Absolutely not. Now, to the final part of your question, I just wonder what I can do, right? And whether I should just sit there and do nothing when everything in me is dying to help. Why is everything in you dying to help? That is something you should ask. And if you're fighting feminism and you still feel you're doing it for women rather than for yourself and for equality and for a sane world, then that is questionable. Why do you want to be feminist? That takes us back to that question, right? Ask yourself those questions. How does feminism benefit you as a man? If you come up with it and you are convinced, then keep on doing what you're doing. But if you've not been able to answer these questions, go back to your drawing board and answer the questions before you think of advocacy. But if you answer those questions, whether you want to keep advocating, keep advocating. If you do want to do that, even privately, publicly, within your family, and also understand that in raising your children, especially your male children as a man, you have to raise them as a feminist and raise them to see women as equal. So thank you so much if you watched this. I know that this is a very long video, so if you did watch till the end, thank you so much for doing that. And if you're not following me yet, do ensure to follow. Give me a thumbs up if you find this video helpful, and please share this video with your friends. If you have a male feminist ally, an ally or whatever, share the video with them and get their thoughts on it. And see you guys in my next video. Bye.